True love awakens, transforms, and liberates. But what happens when what we call love suffocates, breeds fear, or creates dependency? There are relationships that don the guise of affection, yet conceal dynamics of control, projection, and self-denial. It takes courage to see that sometimes what hurts isn't love, it's attachment, it's neediness. It's our own shadow trying to express itself through another. In this video, we'll explore the emotional traps that masquerade as passion, drawing on the deep teachings of analytical psychology to reveal what love truly is and what it definitely isn't. If you've ever felt that something was off, even when everything seemed romantic, this content is for you. Leave a comment saying, "I choose to live a conscious and true love." Carl Gustav Jung's analytical psychology offers us profound tools to understand why we so often confuse love with unconscious patterns of pain. When a relationship feels like love but causes constant anguish, we're likely dealing with projections. Jung explains that, especially in the early stages of a relationship, we project onto the other person aspects of ourselves that we haven't yet recognized or developed. This projection can lead to intense idealizations, where the other is not seen as they are but as we need them to be in order to fill our voids. In this context emerges the shadow, all that we deny or repress within ourselves. When we fail to face our own pain, neediness, or fear of abandonment, we end up attracting relationships that mirror precisely those contents. Love that manipulates, humiliates, or imprisons is not love. It's the manifestation of unintegrated, unconscious aspects. Individuation, the central process on the Jungian journey, invites each person to become who they truly are, and that is only possible when we stop seeking our own completeness in another. True union arises from the wholeness of two individuals who choose to meet without losing themselves. Moreover, the balance between anima and animus, the feminine and masculine principles within each of us, is essential for loving with maturity. When we project our anima or our animus onto our partner, we fail to recognize that these potentials already exist within us. This leads to emotional dependency, idolization, and often suffering. Therefore, recognizing that the love that hurts may never have been love is the first step toward a profound journey of self-knowledge and healing. Jungian psychology does not offer easy answers, but it provides a map to the most important love of all, self-love. For centuries, the collective imagination has nurtured the myth of the soulmate, that ideal person tailor-made to complete us. This narrative is seductive because it touches on an archetypal wound of the human soul, the sense of separation, of incompleteness, of something essential missing. However, for Jungian psychology, this external search for the other half is often a psychic trap. The desire to fuse with another masks our failure to integrate our own internal opposites. When we fall passionately in love with someone and place them on a pedestal, we are often projecting onto them qualities that actually belong to our own psyche. Jung called this phenomenon projection, a mechanism by which we unconsciously see in the other our own ideals, repressed desires, unrealized talents, and even unhealed emotional wounds. In the case of the soulmate, this projection is especially intense because it blends the yearning for completeness with archetypal images of perfect love. We see in the other what we want to see, not who they really are. We idealize and romanticize, creating an illusion. When the veil lifts and reality asserts itself, enchantment turns into frustration, resentment, and even rejection, not because the other has changed, but because the projection has lost its power, and we confront a reality often at odds with our fantasy. This process is inevitable, and on some level even necessary. Romantic projections help us become aware of parts of ourselves that were unconscious. The problem arises when we cling to the projection, ignoring clear signs of incompatibility, disrespect, or emotional pain. It is then that love begins to hurt, not because it is love, but because we are relating to a distorted mirror of ourselves, not to the other in their truth. Instead of searching outward for what we lack, Jung invites us into the process of individuation, the inner journey of becoming whole, of integrating our internal opposites. When we draw closer to our own inner totality, we begin to see in the other a fellow traveler, not a savior. Love then becomes a conscious choice between two whole beings, not an unconscious attempt to heal through fusion. The soulmate illusion, when unrecognized, leads to recurring patterns of romantic disillusionment, emotional dependency, and frustration. Yet, seen through the lens of depth psychology, it transforms into an opportunity for self-knowledge and growth. Every relationship, even the most intense and painful, can be a revealing mirror not of the other but of ourselves. Recognizing projection is the first step toward loving more lucidly. It takes courage to remove someone from the altar of our fantasies and see them in their full humanity, light and shadow alike. Only then does love cease to be a prison and become a bridge connecting two beings who, before meeting each other, dared to meet themselves. Many relationships begin with intense declarations, constant attention, and an almost magical sense of connection. However, over time, that same intensity can devolve into control, manipulation, and emotional pain. What once felt like love turns into a cycle of possessiveness and suffering. From a Jungian perspective, these dynamics spring not from true love, but from the shadow, the hidden aspects of the psyche that, when unrecognized, emerge destructively in close bonds. The shadow embodies everything we reject in ourselves: personality traits, repressed desires, traumas, impulses we consider unacceptable. Unacknowledged, these parts get projected onto our partner, leading to constant accusations, possessive behaviors, irrational jealousy, and attempts to shape them according to our own insecurities. The partner becomes an extension of our shadow, and the relationship a battlefield where we unconsciously fight what we cannot confront within ourselves. For example, someone who denies their own aggressiveness may find themselves with explosive or controlling partners. Someone who represses fear of abandonment may cling to another at any cost, even sacrificing their own dignity. This cycle of suffering is fueled by the illusory hope that if the other changes, everything will be resolved. But true healing lies not in controlling another's behavior, but in accepting our own shadow, looking within, recognizing the patterns that perpetuate toxic bonds, and breaking the cycle. Relationships driven by the shadow swing between idealization and devaluation. One day the other is everything we've dreamed of, the next a source of anger and fear. This emotional whiplash reflects our own internal instability. When we're not whole, we seek in another an anchor, and end up imprisoned by an affection that suffocates rather than frees us. Loving someone should not mean erasing ourselves, molding ourselves, or living in fear of abandonment. If a relationship imprisons and generates more anguish than peace, it is an effective distortion fueled by unconscious content. And often the hardest truth to face is that the pain doesn't come from the other person, but from our resistance to the work that needs doing inside us. Jung's way out is individuation, consciously integrating the shadow so we can act with emotional autonomy and discernment. As we acknowledge and embrace our hidden parts, we stop projecting them onto our partner. We free ourselves from toxic dynamics and make room for a more authentic bond, one built on mutual acceptance and the freedom to be who we are. The shadow is not evil. It simply wants to be seen, understood, and integrated. Doing this inner work brings the clarity to distinguish between love and attachment, care and control, connection and prison. Only then can we navigate out of the maze of toxic relationships toward a more conscious connection. There are moments when love feels like it fills every gap in existence. The other person becomes our center, our reason for laughter, our source of comfort. At first, that immersion can seem like true love, but deeper reflection reveals that this total surrender, this flirtation with fusion, is often rooted in emotional neediness, not conscious love. Analytical psychology helps us tell overwhelming passion apart from masked dependency. When someone lacks a solid relationship with themselves, they seek externally what they believe is missing internally: self-esteem, security, validation. Such needs masquerade as passion, creating a psychic symbiosis rather than a healthy union. Two people trying unconsciously to complete each other through fusion. The beloved becomes not just a companion, but therapist, savior, mirror, and shield. Passion turns to obsession, desire to anxiety, intimacy to imprisonment. Any hint of distance triggers despair, as if one's identity depends on the other. Jung shows that this unconscious search for completeness in another stems from unreconciled polarities within us, especially the anima and animus archetypes. Projecting these energies onto our partner creates the illusion that we will only be whole if we are with them, a return to the symbolic womb, to the fantasy of absolute fusion without conflict or separation. Yet adult life demands differentiation. True love blossoms only between two individuals, unafraid of being whole on their own. The danger of emotional fusion is the erasure of psychic boundaries. There is no longer an I and a you, but a confused mass of expectations and fears. Attempts at autonomy feel like threats, silences feel like rejection, and gradually the relationship becomes suffocating, even as it endures under the banner of love. Neediness itself is not a crime, but it must be recognized and worked on. We all carry wounds of rejection, abandonment, and absence. Unprocessed, these wounds become holes we try to fill with another's presence, and no healthy partnership can thrive on desperation. Passion born of neediness may blaze with intensity, but it soon sours into instability and pain. When expectations go unmet, frustration breeds fear, anger, and despair. Love then ceases to expand and becomes a battleground between fantasy and reality. The antidote lies in individuation, a return to one's own center, developing the capacity to be alone, to know and embrace oneself. Only then can we love with freedom, without demanding completion. When a relationship springs from two well-defined centers, it becomes healthy, nurturing, and expansive. True love respects the other's space, supports individual growth, and does not fear silence or distance. It sustains rather than suffocates, embraces rather than invades, shares rather than demands. Whole in ourselves, we seek not to be completed, but to share our wholeness. And in that shift from neediness to presence, love ceases to be a prison and becomes shared freedom. To truly love is an act of courage, not because it demands sacrifice, but because it requires presence, wholeness, and emotional responsibility. In Carl Jung's framework, conscious love does not spring from need, lack, or fusion, but from the encounter of two beings who first recognize themselves. This is the path of individuation, essential for love to transform from prison into freedom. To individuate is to become who we are, integrating polarities, shadow, archetypes, wounds, and potentials. On this journey, we learn to relate without losing ourselves, to love not from fear of solitude or dependency, but from a genuine desire to share. Love then becomes a space of mutual growth, reflecting what already exists within us, rather than filling a void. Conscious love demands ongoing presence and a commitment to self-knowledge. With genuine listening, honest dialogue, and emotional freedom, partners grow together, collaborating, supporting one another, and seeing differences as opportunities rather than obstacles. But this can only happen when each person is rooted in their own identity, knows their limits, desires, and needs, and has the courage to live their truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Many fear that asserting their authenticity will cost them their partner. Yet what is lost in that moment is not true love, but the illusion that sustained the relationship. To love without losing oneself is also to practice detachment, understanding that the other does not belong to us, and that a bond only matters when both can be fully themselves. Jung reminds us that completeness resides not in another, but in the self, our inner center. Aligning with that center brings clarity, discernment, and genuine love, which reflects in our relationships. We stop demanding that someone fill us and start appreciating the beauty of being whole alongside another whole being. Conscious love doesn't eliminate challenges, but transforms how we face them. Conflicts cease to threaten and become invitations to deeper connection. Intimacy grows not through problem-free days, but through the constant practice of respect, empathy, and truth. Choosing individuation means choosing a love that liberates rather than imprisons, that values presence over perfection, and thrives on inner abundance rather than shortage. In this fertile space, true intimacy arises, two souls recognizing, respecting, and walking side by side, not to complete but to accompany one another. What seems like love but hurts, suffocates, and consumes is not love. It's a reflection of what still needs healing within us. Throughout this script, we've immersed ourselves in Jungian analytical psychology to uncover the effective distortions that wear the mask of love. We've seen how projections, unintegrated shadows, and the absence of individuation lead to relationships that push us away from ourselves. Yet we've also discovered another path, one of consciousness, emotional freedom, and reconnection with the self. Loving without losing oneself is possible, but it demands a real commitment to self-knowledge. It requires stopping the search outside for what can only be found within, and above all, it requires the courage to say enough to what harms, even if it comes disguised as affection. If you feel this content has touched something in your soul, subscribe to the channel, Turn on notifications and share this video with those who also need to awaken. And before you go, click on the video on the screen now. It will deepen this process of transformation even further. Remember, the love you deserve begins when you choose not to accept anything less than what honors who you are.